All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to The Pinch, where I am hiding Jim Nesso's face. But, of course, he is still there, the lovely Jim Nesso himself. How's it going?
Am I actually on stream, or have you actually hidden me from?
I hid your
Well,
face.
now I see it. You put your Steam friends in front of me.
Well,
Wow.
I was talking to some important people. I was hoping that at last minute I could get a proper co-host in here. Unfortunately, none
Why
of
were you
them were
going somewhere?
available, and we've got Jim Nesso back, everyone. We're so excited.
I was gonna say, were you going somewhere? Was it? Is that what the need for a real co-host, or?
Oh, yeah.
I got this bad boy from here, if you don't mind.
All right, let's go. Jim Nesso, first topic, no. Oh, and I've accidentally popped in the first topic. We do have the week in review, and what a week it's been, Jim. We've had the
7 days,
throwdown.
just like every other, just like every other week. 7 days of action.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe for you, but I've just been here watching as the Throwdown TV event happened on Sunday. A big event, not just for OC, but for yourself as well, as
Definitely.
you were there casting it. And it did seem that there was something a little bit missing there, some kind of analysis, really Rocket League knowledge, that kind of stuff. If only there was somebody there on that Throwdown TV broadcast that could provide that level of knowledge.
I was gonna say, if only you were as good at actually dropping the mic as you were hints. Um, I'm kidding. We'll see what happens in the future. But it was a fantastic event on Sunday. Obviously,
Yeah.
the start of a long relationship between Throwdown and Rocket League community as well. So it was it was a really, really good thing to see. Things were kicked off without a hitch because the man behind the scenes there and obviously D'Amico were making sure that everything was going fantastic. So ran without a hitch. It was a great opening weekend. Nothing much more to say than congratulations to the 4 teams that qualified.
Yeah, it was a really, really great event. I enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed watching it. You guys were pretty good casting. There was something, though, I do want to call you out on because, it's the pinch. You need to call somebody out. There was 2 times that the stream went offline during breaks, but they went offline during the event. And was there any kind of reason for that? We did lose, I think, one of the hosts turned off because the stream did go offline. I just wanted to see if you had any knowledge about that.
No, as far as we were concerned, I think maybe we lost the connection to Twitch here from AU Internet, but from our end, everything ran completely as we wanted to. We never turned the stream off, so unfortunate that those things happen in Australia, but you've got to just swallow it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and of course, this week, the first time on the new Yummy Cheese Man schedule for the pinch as well. Exciting stuff, as Soma is here complaining that I've changed the time, except it's always been on Thursdays, and it was announced 2 weeks ago that it would be changing to the Tuesday, and we are finally here. I've hit 2 days in a row of sticking to the Yummy Cheese Man streaming
Nice.
schedule, so we're pretty much there. We're almost through an entire half a week of actual stream schedules going according to plan. So big
Is
news
that-
for the channel.
It's a chance to give you a pat on the back for sticking to it for 2 days.
Yeah, I mean, that's the entire point, right? Like, now that I've got that pat on the back, I don't have to actually stick to it anymore. It's done. I've earned my dues and got the pats. I'll just start winging it again. But
Here's to another 2 days of stream schedule.
for those who don't know, if you are in my Discord, I think most of you are, then that's where I announce this kind of stuff, like changes, stream schedules, random stuff that I don't
Cheese
want to...
tastings, wine tastings, all those things.
Yeah, I don't want to kind of spam people with that stuff. So
But he does.
Instead, I only spam them on RLO with announcements every single day about tournaments.
You've got to do what you got to do to get in people's ears about these things. Otherwise, they don't turn up.
Yeah. What is there anything else that happened this week, Jim? Just throw down.
Well, I mean, how do you break your weeks up? Do you block them? from Sunday through till Saturday, or do you go
No,
from...
they're from the last episode of The Pinch to this episode
Oh,
of The Pinch, of course.
so this is technically a short week.
Yeah, there were only 5 days in this week for some reason.
It's just a leap week, is it?
Yeah, leap week. And I guess the other thing to talk about, the entire first topic of the show.
Are we talking about what happened or what didn't happen? Is it
what didn't happen?
okay?
And that is the GameStar qualifiers. I love this old version of OBS, which sometimes just messes with the text, but it is there now. GameStar qualifiers were cancelled on Saturday. They did not happen. And there's a lot of controversy around the community here in OCE about that. For context, what happened was there were 19 teams signed up for the event on Saturday, 10 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time, and only 8 teams showed up and checked in on time. Only 7 actually checked in on time, and then it was extended 30 minutes to hope that more would, and 1 more checked in. So,
wait, 1 more is in the team, 1 more,
No.
or an addition? Okay,
1 more was invited. They're idiots for using the name 1 more, but because forever on it's just going to be 1 more.
Us to expand our vocabulary.
Yeah, but it was cancelled. It was unfortunate, and then immediately after the fire started, all the discords around Rocket League community, just everyone was just at each other saying whose fault it was. And I really wanted to say that everyone is at fault. There's no single person who is to blame. You can't say, oh, I'm right because I thought GameStar was the one who did it incorrectly, and the other person argue with them to say, this person, these individuals should have showed up. It's both of them, you're both correct in a way. It's up to everyone. It's not going to happen that you'll have 11 teams not show up unless GameStar has made a mistake, but it's also up to those 11 teams to actually show up, right?
Oh, definitely. It's always unfortunate that event becomes cancelled. So it's unfortunately a range of factors there, but you're right. There has to be a clear disconnect in communication for that level of disengagement to actually occur. And unfortunately, that's the result, that only several teams checked in. It's quite clear to me that somewhere in the process there was something going wrong, and I'm sure they'll look at it and figure out exactly what went wrong. I believe there's been an official inquiry or an unofficial inquiry into these things. Someone put on their Sherlock Holmes caps and dug a little deeper, went a little bit deeper into these things. Not sure who he was, but he's done it. The community hero.
I wish I had the hat, but yes, I went and talked to all the parties involved. One of the big things to note is, and I want to put this out of the way at the start. If you are a player and you sign up for a tournament, then it's your responsibility to either show up or tell them in advance when you find out that you can't show up to contact the tournament organizers and tell them. So I am very disappointed in these teams. Before I actually talk about some specific reasons that this happened, I did want to show you. So these here are the teams that didn't show up. The top 9 teams were invited straight to the main event, to the top 16. And then there were 8 teams who actually showed up to the event, which in terms of power rankings, they kind of fit between that number 10 and that number 18 spot. So they're kind of, more semi-professional level teams. And then you have these teams, and of them, really there's only one team that stands out to me as a team that probably has the ability to be professional, that should be looking to take it to the next step, and that was Infinity. That's the team of Slurpee, Hectic, and Heptic, I think, at the moment. I can't remember, maybe the Lulz as their third. But they didn't show up, and I had a statement out from them, which was that they signed up 2 weeks early, and yet forgot about it because there were no more announcements that were visible since then. So they saw the original announcement, signed up instantly, which is the professional thing to do. You want to sign up as soon as you know you can play. And then didn't show up for that 2 weeks later, simply because they forgot.
Keep a diary.
Yeah, they should really
do something.
Really keep a diary. I think at that point in time, there may not have even actually been a time scheduled. There may have been. But that's problem on both ends still. The players should not need somebody to hold their hands. And these Infinity guys, they should be more professional. They are, well, they sit around number 10 on the power rankings. That's the kind of level of the team that you're going to start seeing that they should be putting in more effort. But then we move on from them. They should have shown up. The other teams, though, if they signed up 2 weeks earlier and didn't receive any more notification, you could say, oh, you should be more professional. But these guys here, they're just playing for fun. Like, they're not even expected to qualify in that top 16 in the first place. And they're definitely not expected, if they make it, in that off chance that they make it, that they will do well and win any money. They have no reason. They're not getting anything out of that $1,100 prize pool, other than the fact that they get to have some fun and play some competitive Rocket League. And then we have a lot of people here in the community saying that they should be very professional. They really, really shouldn't. Why am I naming and shaming? Mostly because I am disappointed in Infinity as a group. And I don't blame them. I think that there was that communication breakdown, but I would like to have seen them show up. Of the other teams, these 10 teams here that are listed, the majority said that they either didn't know the start time, which is completely understandable because it was at 10 a.m., which is earlier than any other tournament that's been in the last year, since the last GRL qualifier, which everybody complained about. Or they had other issues, such as, they needed to pull out and they didn't know how to contact, or they didn't contact GameStar. So that was the broad experience of most of the teams. I didn't get in touch with any of Echo, Balkan, Chi, Tamir, Bota, or Exto, because I don't even know who they are. That's how much of a casual set of teams they are. And the other ones all seemingly had good reasons. Feint, as well as a team, they actually were in it. They needed to change their name. They accidentally signed up as Feint, so they also signed up as Athletico Academy. So there weren't actually 19 teams signed up. They had actually changed their name and checked in time. So that's one more team. So, I really can't blame any of these teams except maybe one or two. It was entirely circumstances, and when you have other tournaments on a weekend, ESL, Hype, that have 47 teams sign up and 5 of them fail to show up, that kind of ratio shows that GameStar is really, really doing something wrong there.
Yeah, I mean, quite clearly for me, it seems almost immediately that communication is cited as an issue here. So you spoke about the teams needing to be more professional or whatnot. Look, Sam Watts made a comment in the chat there. Almost immediately, being professional isn't just turning up on time. Being professional is actually expected of everyone. It's not just the job of someone who terms themselves professional. It's expected of everyone. If you enter into these tournaments, yes, your expectation is to turn up, whether you're professional, whether you're casual. However, there's always that balance, obviously, with some of these players. They're not expected to go far. Yeah, they're in it for just a bit of fun. You need to keep those sorts of teams engaged in the process, and it's quite clear that they weren't engaged in the process. They were told to sign up. They weren't given indication of a schedule at all. And from there on out, I mean, really, what's their engagement level with the actual tournament? Are they, they quite clearly weren't being communicated to. They quite clearly didn't remember that it was on. They didn't hear anything from the here on in. And then it's even harder for them to, in some instances, remember that they've got these sorts of things on if they're not being constantly engaged with. So I think, it's definitely the fault of both parties here. And, I mean, I hope it doesn't happen again, because clearly it's not not a good look anyway to have tournament organisers have to cancel tournaments, both for the scene and also for that particular tournament organiser as well.
Yeah, it's not the best situation, but as you said, a communication breakdown. I looked through; there were not a single announcement on the Discord, on their own GameStar Discord, and I think there were maybe a couple of posts about it that weren't specifically at Hearing or at Everyoneing in the Rocket League specific section. Though, there was a time where GameStar had all of the Rocket League community in their Discord. But I don't think that's the case. If you're taking a 6-month or maybe it was an 8-month hiatus from the scene, you've got to expect that most people have left the Discord and that some of those would have come back with the announcement. It seems that every single announcement that they made was on Twitter, and that is not the home of OCE Rocket League.
Yeah.
That's not where people are looking to see the updates. And even though those Twitter posts had starting at 10 a.m. on this day, no one else said it. Even their website said the date and talked about stuff, and I had to actually search through after the fact to find the schedule on the website down the bottom, and only because I knew it was at 10 a.m. and I searched for 10 a.m. could I find it. It was down the bottom in the schedule, probably way beyond the point where anybody read, because they were all looking at the juicy announcement and prize pool and stuff like that. And then it was on the challenge, and I don't think people looked to the challenge. They looked to their website, and they looked to the Discord. And look, honestly, I can't blame people. I was the only one who made an announcement outside in the standard channel, and I didn't remember to make the announcement. I forgot about the tournament until 10 p.m. the night before. And then I had to go searching for the time, so I understand how difficult it was to sort of find the time. I had to actually go search for it. I made the announcement 10 p.m. before, but not everybody saw it. So there was a huge lack of vision there about the time. Though, there are only probably 2 teams that, I actually got statements from that cited time as the actual issue. And that was... it was possible that there were other teams like that, but, it was still only 2 of 10. The others had different issues. So that is a clear lack of communication. And really the other thing I wanted to talk about with GameStar, I think this is really important as a tournament organizer perspective. We're kind of going to be moving into another topic in the future, but we'll talk about this in the next topic, but they need to make their tournaments fun. You've got to actually, like, if people are going to play, you need to make it fun. You got to make it at an appropriate time that people want to. For a lot of these teams that are coming in through the open qualifier, they're not expected to win money, so there's got to be other incentives, and that's typically fun. I
just jump in on that one. That's what we spoke about last week, was how do we incentivize all these players coming across from a less serious basis and actually converting them into the competitive scene and growing the community like that. Perfect. That's exactly how you tap into these guys. Why? You're already trying to tap into them by inviting the top 9 so they don't have to go through the process of qualifying. You're trying to encourage more teams outside that upper echelon to actually participate.
Yeah, and I think when it comes to having a 10 a.m. tournament that lasts for 6 hours for you to qualify and you're forced to play every single game, every single team would have to play until the end. There is a level of, losing, or, a level along the road where you get tired and you just kind of don't want to play. A lot of people aren't willing to put that time investment in to be able to get through that entire day. And it's stuff this is what really annoyed me about it. Regardless of the fact that it didn't go ahead, I specifically, personally, and I think there were other people in the community who did so as well, gave them very specific feedback last time, and by feedback I mean complaints, about the format, about the Swiss format with no limit on the number of games you can lose before you're knocked out, so teams forfeited. I don't think they understood the Swiss format too well as well, so the forfeits actually ruined the bracket and pushed other teams up higher into qualification when realistically they wouldn't be against those teams, or they shouldn't be forfeiting. It just showed a misunderstanding there. and the length of the tournament was not fun. The start time of the tournament was not fun. And I guess they kind of just forgot that feedback last time.
Yeah, it also becomes a pain in the bum to admin as well. Something of that length and trying to coordinate that many games at once, that becomes a burden on resources.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's disappointing. And again, they actually have been, afterwards very upset, and understandably so. There was feedback from the community it was too early after the fact. And, that's disappointing that if it's at 10 a.m. and there's no reason for be 10 a.m. and it's somebody who is just coming back into the community, you can say, oh, they don't understand the community. They put tournaments at 10 a.m. Or you can actually go and help those people and say, hey, this tournament's at 10 a.m. This is going to be too early for people. If you put it at 12 p.m., you'd get twice the number of sign-ups, and that's probably true. And they would have changed it. From what they've said, they would have changed it if they got that feedback. They just didn't know that for them, 10 a.m. was too early. They forgot about the Western Australian scene, I think, and...
Don't most people?
Yeah, and they're also from New Zealand. Well, Crisis himself is specifically from New Zealand, so that's actually midday for him. So that sounds actually like a great time. No one gave that feedback. I didn't give the feedback either, so, I not attending the tournament, but I specifically could. But I'm an idiot and I forgot about it until the night before and didn't realize it was at 10 a.m. until the night before, so I was late on the ball. I couldn't give them that feedback either.
That being said, with all of that, was it due to the lack of announcements and communication that A, you didn't know what to give feedback on because the details were at best sketchy, and B, weren't reminded to give feedback?
Yeah,
I think those are the two factors.
It's definitely, look, for me, I think the proof is in the pudding that while teams should be acting better, and it's really disappointing for those teams to not show up when they did sign up, or to not at least tell GameStar that they couldn't, I think the proof is in the pudding that GameStar fell short on so many different areas. Small things, but they add up. And especially in terms of communication, it's not, as people have said, about hand-holding. It's about making your tournament visible and advertising it at the appropriate channels. And that is where it fell short. I can't say, they're the ones putting on the tournament. They're the ones making the content for themselves. And even though they are adding something to the community, so they are putting on an $1,100 tournament with community donations as well as donations from GameStar themselves, it's their content and they should be pushing it. They should be the ones that are trying to get people involved in their content, and a lot of that is just announcing it in the correct channels. Apparently RLO did get in touch with RLO and it wasn't announced there, or not repeatedly announced there, and that's a shame. But I guess...
That still should be on tournament organisers to push that agenda, though. It's not like it's GameStar's first rodeo.
Yeah, and... I think somebody else here in chat has said Throwdown did the same things that GameStar did wrong, and that is correct. I think that is true. They announced it a little bit late. They put it early, and they did a few things. But they also did certain things way, way better. They got involved with the community. They got in touch with us. They made sure it was announced on the main area that most of the community is in, that's RLO, Discord, in the announcements section. They created a Discord for people to get involved in and start chatting. And most importantly, there's a huge difference between a $1,000 tournament and a $9,000 tournament with a LAN. You can get away with putting it earlier. They could have put it at 9 a.m. and still had people sign up. And they put it at 11 a.m. because that is early enough that the NA scene is online for the viewership. And that's late enough for people to show up, so they get the higher numbers. If they put it at 9 a.m., they probably would have had less people, but they maybe had a better time for NA. And for that, it's a balancing act. And they probably hit a reasonable balance in terms of time of getting numbers in and, to compare to their actual level of prize pool. You have to do it. If you've got a $100 tournament, then you don't put it at 11 a.m. and you don't make it 7 hours long. You put the tournament with a level of fun and etc. that is based off the prize pool.
Exactly right. I mean, it's not like you're having to reinvent the wheel in many of these instances. These processes have been, tried and tested before. It's not, Yeah, it's not anything new to anybody. In fact, there's probably great examples out there of best practice with how to approach these things. So, yeah, I think from here it's about taking back the feedback in a constructive manner and not, pasting them. In that instance, if you want more tournament organisers to stick around, you can't paste them. You really can't. You've got to actually filter your feedback through the correct channels in the correct way. As much as every bit of you wants to paste them.
Yeah.
I mean, more tournaments for everybody is exactly what you want. You don't want stagnant competition. You don't want people playing for collectively sticks and lint. So if you want to encourage growth, definitely. And I think there is that onus also on the tournament organisers to take that feedback on board. If they're serious about creating content in this particular area, they'll do that. If they're not, you'll see their agenda pretty quickly.
Yeah. Again, disappointed. And I think that will bring me on to the last little bit of this segment. It's sort of bleeding into the next segment where we will be talking about the onus of players and orgs, because I kind of felt it was a good time to really go over that, especially with Jim here, who I think we've talked about it before, but with Nolski and having Jim bring a fresh perspective is great. But I wanted to show everybody there is an announcement from GameStar, and here's their official statement. So I'm going to read it, even though it's boring. You can see it on the stream. These are the facts that matter. GameStar scheduled a qualification tournament for the GRL on the 21st of January. So that hasn't been updated. At 10 a.m., 19 teams registered for the event as scheduled. However, 11 signed up and failed to appear. GRL was, at its inception, an off-season event intended to give teams an opportunity to compete in a unique structure, while the scene's main events were on hiatus. For this reason, GameStar contacted admins at RLO, ESL, and the team behind Sennheiser to make sure that scheduling did not clash with the other events. The window to achieve this is very tight and is now closed. As you can see, the Throwdown event has started, and RLO and ESL events have moved to Saturday, so there is now no weekend day to run the qualifying event. So Season 2 of GRL has been indefinitely postponed. Any donations have been returned to the members that donated to them, as well as the prize pool itself. We'd like to extend our thanks to the team that registered for the qualification tournament and that made the effort to appear on the day, as well as the 9 teams that committed to the league. We apologise for the unfortunate disappointments of the cancellation of the qualification tournament and the postponement of the league. Now, that to me, I highly, highly believe that that is not a postponement. This is speculation, but when somebody starts returning money and starts saying indefinitely postponed, it does seem very likely that it's not postponed, that it is cancelled. Just completely cancelled.
It's pretty easy to draw that conclusion too. I mean, you don't use that sort of language in a statement if you don't intend on actually taking on feedback and rejigging things the next time around, or even tentatively setting the next dates or the next announcement date. So, yeah, that to me looks like a cancellation. That being said, though, it's not as though they've got any external clients like sponsors or anything like that to answer to. This prize pool was put up in part by them and then supplemented by entry fees as well. So they can do that.
There was no entry fees. It was all donations.
Oh, donation. So sorry, yeah.
They did donation matching up to $1,000, and they put in $100 themselves. So they had put in $600, and there was $500 in from the community. So no, harsh entry fees that had to, that would have been difficult to go ahead and return all of them. But there was, the return of the donations. It has essentially been cancelled, and this is very disappointing. It was an $1,100 tournament. But more importantly, I would have been excited to see another org, to see GameStar come back and see how they'd go in the Rocket League space again. In particular, I would have liked to have seen how their casting has changed or improved or whatever over the last 6 months since they last cast, or since I last at least saw them cast Rocket League. But that is essentially the news. GameStar Rocket League is over, and they gave me this statement to read out. It's going to be up on the website later tonight. It's really disappointing for me. But in particular, the one thing that really stood out for me is the fact that they talk about the off season right now, and they have.
Is there an off season?
There is no off season, and that's the big thing I really want to get to. Like, they've postponed this event. This is the third time technically that they've postponed this event. They postponed it. It was originally going to be in, I think, October or September last year, and then Rocket and a couple of other tournaments, just small ones. Rocket showed up and did it, and they decided that was the on season, so they postponed it then to November. And then in November, they sort of made an announcement that it was a $2,100 tournament with entry fees and some sponsorship. And then that got postponed until what we see today. I'm not sure exactly, and I'm not going to say a reason for that one because I can't remember, and so I don't want to be wrong. But that was postponed today.
Don't want to be wrong. You'll get chewed out in
know
PM.
Absolutely nothing. Yes. Maybe we'll show that at the end of the episode as just a little bit extra.
A 90% retraction, that one.
Yeah, 90% retraction. Some people in the chat probably know what I'm talking about, but I will go over that later. But this last postponement, I think it shows a little bit of a lack of knowledge of the growth of Rocket League, with the fact that, right now is when all the time, and it should be continually getting worse and worse as such, as busy as possible, and empty slots should be taken from these organizations, and you're not going to be able to organize an off-season Rocket League simply because there's no seasons. Even with with Cybergamer coming in and doing leagues, if those leagues aren't, $5,000 plus minimum,
or at
then
least
we're still not going
for the players to play.
Well, we're still not going to be revolving around those seasons, right? So they're still not going to see an off-season, on-season. It's just going to hopefully, without a decline, just always be the on-season of Rocket League.
It'll be like tennis. You'll have event circuits per se. You'll have major tournaments throughout the year, and there'll be like your big Grand Slam tournaments, and then you have the smaller tournaments, peppered throughout the rest of the year. Without that big league, that's the way that things go. There is no off season technically, and I mean, there's a few games that are like that. Obviously, most of them though pertain to leagues, and that's what really builds stability. That's what really builds growth, because you have all these circuit style tournaments, the bigger ones. A lot of the smaller teams don't even bother entering because they know where they're going to sit.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good to see, at least in Rocket League, that those smaller teams are entering. And hopefully
sometimes turning
up. Sometimes turning up. Hopefully as Throwdown goes further and the more top teams get eliminated from the qualifiers by the fact that they actually qualify, so they don't get to play in the future one.
And they can't re-enter for a better seed in that particular tournament either.
Yeah. Hopefully the lower teams sort of come back and then play again without needing to take down the top teams in the hope, they're like, let's get through and see if we can qualify at all mentality. Though we'll see with that one. Hopefully the numbers really start growing as of this week for Throwdown, and if you haven't signed up, do, because why not? But it's also a big event. Somebody did ask in chat, that was Tibor, what my thoughts are on Bizer's video on it. Because it is relevant,
I've actually seen that.
Answer this question. I'm not going to show the entire thing. It was a rant by Bizer in a video immediately after GameStar came out. And we will forget about Bizer's connections with GameStars for a second. I thought it was overdramatic. I thought he targeted the players specifically and thought that GameStar was not at fault at all. And also a point that he brought up was that GameStar themselves, that he knew about the event and he's not even a player. But I think that's completely irrelevant when you're a person who is friends with the organizers. You are going to know the event. I think it's silly. I knew about the event. I'm not a player either. Well,
particularly when you're a commentator as well. Like you're a freelance commentator, you're going to be searching for these sorts of events anyway.
Exactly. But I think he fell into the same trap that a lot of the community have done, and that is to think that only one person is to blame. They're like, oh, it's the player's fault. And then somebody else goes, no, it's GameStar's fault. This is why. And in the end, everyone has to share the blame. It's both the players and GameStar's fault. They both made mistakes and both need to rectify themselves in that regards.
Yeah, I think collective finger pointing is not going to get anywhere. Just needs to be a recognition that there's fault from multiple parties here, and it's about improving the processes moving into your next tournament, if you choose to do so.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a good time to lead into our second topic because it is essentially the same thing, and I don't know why it's there. There we go. So I wanted to talk specifically about player and org responsibility because we've just told people that, GameStar made these mistakes and whatnot, and that the players made mistakes. And I wanted to go over, and I specifically want to talk or get this from Jim, because I think you have a good perspective. My perspective is that right now, Rocket League is in an area where it's at a weird state. It's transitioning, but it's still at a very community level. And most people here, in fact, nobody here can do it professionally. No one here could even do it at a semi-professional level. We're all here mostly as a hobby, and some people are far above that and are doing it. They have responsibility to their own orgs and whatnot, but they are doing it casually. And I think there needs to be that expectation. This is my personal opinion, and I'm sure Jim might disagree, and I know Wasted in particular definitely disagrees with me, that it's not just up to those players, that you can't expect them to be completely professional if they're just doing it only for fun. There is certain things that you can't expect players to do just because they're playing the game. And it's, for me, while there is that requirement that you have to act professional before you can become professional, I think just expecting them and being an organization, in particular, say a tournament organizer, to expect players to be 100% professional is completely off the mark. And that you need to be working on getting a middle ground at least.
Just curious, what are those things that you can't expect players to do? Like, can you just give a few examples other than expect them to be professional? Is it more than just that?
There's a lot of things, a lot of the stuff, especially that I get from Wasted, is like, well, they should be willing to wait 5 hours for this because they need to be professional. Let's say there's a great example that I would like to see more of, but is a very fine balance. If you're in a $30 tournament and there's a broadcaster, this broadcaster, they might want to stick to a very specific schedule that involves doing both upper bracket semi-finals and then both lower bracket semi-finals. Now that's going to postpone the tournament 2 hours. People are going to have to wait an extra 2 hours. And can you expect a team who has no reason to wait 2 hours to do that for nothing, essentially? That is the kind of professional attitude I think people expect when they're not doing it. That's an example. I don't think it's really the best example, but it is one of those things that in a $9,000 tournament, if you were, and I hope that this starts to become more of a thing, especially in Throwdown, you could cast only or end at or do every single qualifying match. And if I don't see every single qualifying match in the playoffs, I'm going to be so disappointed because, those are the most exciting matches. The ones that go, if you win this, you have made it to LAN. Then it's going to delay certain things. And for a lot of people, they're not going to bother waiting. Whether in another I've sort of misjumbled my words, but in a smaller tournament, you can't get away with that. And if you're expecting a team just to do it because you're meant to be professional, you're meant to try and be as serious as possible, you can't muck around, then it's a bit off.
I don't think you can have your cake and eat it too, though. I mean, people complain about the GameStar tournament where they've got multiple games they have to play back to back to back, and then they complain about waiting around. I don't get it. It's it's been done for years, and it's not just obviously in Rocket League. It's just tournaments in general. So I mean, to me, pick or choose one. Like either you don't want to wait around, or you're just sick of playing multiple matches back to back to back. It's like
I don't know about the people complaining about multiple matches back to back. I do think there is a complaint about having a tournament that runs 7 hours, and I think that's a very similar thing. If you're playing for 7 hours, or if you're playing a tournament that has lots of breaks that take you to 7 hours, it's a very similar thing. It's not about being back to back. I think a lot of players much prefer back to back. A lot of tournament admins are like, oh, let's force this team to take an hour break, then play a match, then take an hour break, then play a match. That's really off-putting, right? You're in CSGO, where you have a bit more prize pool, and it's a bit more professional, you're expecting that. But you need to, and it's very hard during the tournament, to get warm-up matches and warm-up scrims, which you need to do before your match to be at the highest performance. So if you're taking teams and forcing them to take staggered breaks, it's, you know, maybe better for your broadcast schedule, but for that team it would be much better if you focused on having the best experience for them, and that would be if there were 2 hours of break, to force them to take a 2-hour full break so they only had to warm up again once.
I guess that's the nature of the new territory that we're starting to see. Obviously, you get more sponsors coming into the tournaments. They've got expectations too with the way that the broadcast is actually scheduled. So you can't exactly... you've got to find that balance, obviously, that's best for players and then for tournament organisers and broadcasts and sponsors. It doesn't always match up with what's best for the players. After all, there are going to be minimum requirements for sponsor ads that are going to run for this many times throughout the period. You know, you've got to have those breaks. You've got to actually structure your broadcast in the sense that it's appealing for the sponsors as well. It's a range of different things. So I don't think it's as clear cut as one or the other. There's always going to have to be some compromise there. So maybe in like your smaller community tournaments where there isn't a sponsor invested, yes, you can do that. You can get away with it because the broadcast doesn't necessarily revolve around sponsors and looking at the getting the best matches, getting the best viewership. In the smaller tournaments, you can broadcast every match or just select the ones that you want to. It doesn't have to rely on that.
Yeah, I definitely agree that that is the case, and it is going to be more strict. But on the same note, I think GameStar is a great example. If you want tons of teams signing up for your tournament, you need to make it fun. So many people here, the only reason they play competitively is for fun. They're not going to get a salary out of it. They're probably, a lot of teams, they're not even expected to ever win a tournament or make money from a tournament, not even a $15 one. And so you need to have, at some level, the ability to cater to them, even if it's just to give them an enjoyable experience by making sure it's not, super difficult, that they're not, having a hard time getting set up and then play because they're expected to play a game and then lose and get knocked out instantly. There's got to be, some level at least difference of catering to those people. And also somebody in chat said, if you're doing it for fun, don't sign up for serious tournaments. Well, then we have no one sign up for serious tournaments.
Or you have no depth in the actual field. You might get like 9 teams that realistically think they can win it, and that's it.
Well, in OCE, you might have 4 teams,
Ambition is always greater than some people's talent. So.
Jim Nesso, the expert on that one. But
well, I do extend helping hands to people.
Yeah, it's got to be a scene that is robust, especially right now, where while people are saying, and I even touched on it, that we are transitioning between a community and an esport. It's built off the community. I still think we are majority community based, and so it's so difficult. But tournament admins in particular, tournament organizers, still need to think about the player experience. And I really hope that people like GameStar, that people like Wasted, and I think Dover's fairly good at this, come and talk to the players and find something that works for them. And I think GameStar is actually, and you touched on it earlier as well, decent at that in the fact that they invited the top 9 teams to go through so they don't have to verse those ones. I would love to see more formats like that where new players and big teams get to play in the same tournament. I did it for Starbase Arc where I brought in the top 4 teams went straight into the single elimination finals. And everyone else had to come in through double elimination qualifiers. It meant that everyone got a game. It meant that brand new teams didn't get absolutely thrashed by the top team as soon as they came in, because a brand new team's expected to be bottom seed, and they're going to be versing a top seed if they are in the same pool. And importantly, for the upper level player experience, they don't have to spend 2 hours slogging through some of the worst games they ever play because they're just 10-0ing these brand new teams over and over again. So there are solutions out there for tournament organizers. There are ways that you can make a fun, exciting schedule that is great for both the players, the casters, and the watchers. And it is a balancing act that I know at least Wasted tries to balance around. But I think every single organizer needs to keep all of them in mind.
I agree, in most part. But I think a lot of the problem too is the fact that these tournaments that we're talking about, they're the only real form of competition at the moment in the absence of a greater league. You wouldn't have some issues with teams, not wanting to chance their hand at these qualifiers because that's the only gauge they've got of their level. They're not participating in a regular league against players or teams that perceive to be at their level. So if they're performing above that level, they might in their league per se, they might be inclined to try and enter a tournament, etc. So I think yes, it is a problem too without a long-term competition as well. So there's a lot of emphasis placed on these individual tournaments, particularly from the player experience. In the absence of a long-term league, yes, this is the only player experience some players are actually getting in the game, and if it's it's not beneficial for them, they can be turned away in that regard.
Yeah, I'd love to see more things like RLOABCs with divisions for those new players, separate them out into a more enjoyable experience themselves. Unfortunately, that is a smaller tournament, and there's less emphasis on actual structured teams entering them. Right now, it's a lot of pickup teams that enter those tournaments, which is a shame. And that is where a really solid league with different divisions would be fantastic. And hopefully, at least Cybergamer brings some of that. The CGA division is apparently open, so there'll probably be 1,000 bajillion teams in there and lose the separation compared to if they had 4 divisions like they used to have. But that is important. So in terms of player responsibilities, and I'm going to say, you don't have to, as a player, act professionally. You don't have to act professionally. But you 100% should act professionally if you ever want to be in the top echelon of gaming, if you ever want to turn this into a career, if you ever want to get a good organization that can provide support and assistance in terms of equipment, salary, any of that kind of stuff, then you need to act professionally now, far, far before it might even be possible to be a professional. Which means signing up for tournaments early, not the hour before they close, means telling organizations that you can't play if at any point in time you find out that you are unable to attend. Pulling out anything like that, it means being responsible on Twitter, not starting flame wars, not being really rude in your interactions with tournament organizers and admins. Some of the things that I think a lot of players do now, and when I was a player and interacting with tournament admins as well, I was quite inflammatory. I'd be like, "Why are you doing this?" Well, there's probably a reason that they're doing something, and instead of doing that, say, "Hey, we have this thing. Could we please do this?" And that is entirely part of acting professional. And I really would like to see that. It's a lot of the reasons that the admins now are like, ugh.
A lot of those things you listed aren't just being professional. they actually just fall under being, a decent person, being respectful of everybody. It's not just being professional. There's also just actually being decent as a person, as a player. There's a level of respect that you actually have to display, regardless of whether you consider yourself professional or not. I don't think you should, just have to do these things if you consider yourself professional. You should be doing these things anyway.
Yeah, I think you to a level you are 100% correct. Especially that last one where it comes to having respect for the admins who are doing work, and if you just go and start yelling at them, it's not the right way to approach things, and you're less likely to actually get what you want.
You'll never get what you want if you start yelling at admins.
Yeah. But in terms of managing social media and all that sort of stuff, I think that definitely comes under acting professional. You shouldn't really have to, manage social media, promote yourself, maybe even promote tournaments, look after the scene. If you're not trying to be professional, if you don't ever want to get anywhere, you can feel free to not worry about Twitter, right?
Trust me. Twitter, yeah, look, it's a murky one. I think that one falls under just wanting to expand the game's reach. But yeah, look, there are certain things you can and can't do if you want to consider yourself professional.
Yeah. Hopefully everyone is on board with all of that. I'm going to do my weekly spiel. Please continue being friendly to brand new players, and I see it day in and day out. There is a couple of people who are really friendly, and there are a couple of people who instantly start trolling, making fun of new members or new players who aren't as good at the game or who don't know something you don't know. How are they expected to know? I even saw Domica from Throwdown come into chat today, and somebody, instead of answering the question where she came in and said, hey, are there streamers? How can we promote those streamers? They responded with, OC streamers lol, and, it was completely unhelpful. And then Domica straight after that was like, oh, so you guys don't have streamers? Oh, okay, sorry, I thought I might be able to help there. We'll find another way of helping out. It's just silly. Just, especially, obviously there are people who understand in a public setting that you're just trolling, but if you're brand new to the scene, then you just don't try and troll them. You just be as friendly as possible until they're at a point where you're like Justice Rowboat or Cyrix, who understand that you're just messing about.
Yeah, if they're not familiar with your persona, or at least the one that you try and put out there, then a certain level of decency's got to be displayed, particularly if you want any growth.
Yeah. And again, weekly saying of please, when you are in ranked, when you are meeting people in just the public servers in Rocket League, spread the news about the tournaments. Tell them to sign up to ESL and RLO and Throwdown. It is the best way at the moment that we have the best tool for growing the number of players and viewers and community members in the scene. I think a lot of people have been doing quite fantastically at that last week. I've had a few people reach out to me and say, really excitedly, I got 5 people to sign up to RLO. And if you think about it, 5 people, if they brought their friends as well, then that's 5 new teams. Otherwise, it's roughly 2 new teams that are playing tournaments. And if everyone managed to do that here in the chat, that would be 60 new teams, is it? I think there's 30 people hanging out. So it would have a big difference.
That being said, though, too, looking at the top players, particularly those that are in orgs of any sort of upper echelon, you guys, it's a good chance for you to actually build your personal player fan base as well as a result. And that's great for your personal brand, because that'll follow you beyond whichever team that you go to or whichever organization you go to next. And that'll help you improve things like your streaming platforms. That'll help you improve things like personal sponsorships, etc. It makes you more marketable as a player because you've got players engaged with what you're doing. And then it can be as simple as actually just saying, hey guys, I think you're actually of an awesome standard, come play these competitions. Or even if they're not, they're just of an average standard, you can say, well, here guys, you can actually improve your standard by playing against players of your skill set or better in a competition setting. Yeah, they'll follow you for a long time. And trust me, players that you introduce to the competitive game will follow you regardless of what you're doing, where you're going, and which team you're in.
Yeah, I always love saying that you're at a great starting point. You're at the right level to start playing tournaments, and that's where you improve. And that's 100% true. If you met a rising star, for instance, they are at a great starting point. They might be able to start at Bs. If you see a challenger elite, you can get them in starting at Cs. And if you see someone at champion, well, maybe they are ready to start in the A's bracket itself, and then improve from there. So do not judge people based on their rank or what their skill level is right now, because everyone started off being really poo and got way, way better.
Started from the bottom, now we're here.
Yeah. So that is player
Some of us are still at the
responsibility. You like being bottom, but org responsibility.
I hope this is Rocket League related.
Well, I can't remember the last time I looked at ranks. I think last time you were at Challenger 2.
I don't even know, mate, to be honest. I've had my controller confiscated, so I'm
back onto
I'm
the
out of
keyboard and mouse.
Yeah, I'm out of the game.
So hopefully orgs can keep all of that in mind. I think there is still an org responsibility to not only try and make a tournament as successful as possible, but to at least garner feedback from individuals and the community, to reach out and try and find out their needs. It's silly that the community might not get contacted as a whole, and somebody would put on a tournament that they don't have any understanding about, and that they try and make it as fun as possible within the confines of those other two parameters, and that is fun to watch and fun to broadcast. And I only say fun to broadcast because I'm a caster and I understand how much better it is casting something where it's exciting compared to casting something where there's not that much exciting going on. There's a big difference between casting a free tournament with B-level teams compared to casting an A-level tournament qualifying match where the winner goes through to a LAN. That setting itself and maybe the level of play is what makes it exciting and fun for the caster, and that goes across to the viewers specifically. And in the end, that broadcasting and viewership is what brings in the majority of the money.
100% right, and you're 100% correct in the sense that that energy radiates to the broadcast, because the players are putting on the best show. You're putting out your level of enthusiasm for their skill sets, and that just translates to an excellent viewing experience and an excellent experience all round. Because the sponsors, they look at these cuts out of the or these highlights out of the actual games themselves. They request these sorts of things, and if you don't seem like you're having fun, the players on the other hand don't seem like they're having fun, then that translates. The sponsors pick up on that sort of thing. So you obviously want more of those guys involved in the scene. So it's in their best interests to raise the entire product as a whole.
Exactly, and I think that kind of moves into our next point as well. I'm going to kind of combine this one. I've got it as how to become a caster, because we have, of course, Jim Nesso on here this week, and what better opportunity than to ask you, as the second best caster on the show tonight, how to become
someone else on
a caster. I think there's somebody out there in the background. I think I saw PDG walking past.
Yes.
So
yeah, he's somewhere around.
I also want to combine this with becoming a streamer as well. I think it's a good topic to kind of combine in a way, because both of them are very much about entertaining an audience. And while they do hit very different modules, so we won't worry too much about technical stuff about streaming or anything about that. I think they hit some of the same notes. And in particular, I'll start it off by saying, just like before, you need to be having fun. Just like right now, myself and Jim are having a gay old time.
It's always fun.
And
in that the traditional sense.
That really carries across to the audience. It's important, both as a caster and a streamer, to have tons of fun.
100%. You've always got to enjoy what you do, and don't get me wrong. Either of those pursuits are very, very taxing. They're a grind. People refer to them as a grind, and if you don't enjoy it, then you're probably not going to enjoy putting in the amount of effort required to actually make it something successful. Because it's not all the final product that goes out on the camera to the world. You know, what you see on the stream isn't the result of, you know, someone just sitting down clicking their fingers and something happening in between that file transferring on the internet and it coming on your screen. It's the result of hard work that goes in the background. So everybody sees the diamond, but they don't see the factories behind it that go into producing it, people mining it, etc. They don't see the backstory. So you've got to have that enthusiasm. You've got to enjoy it. You've got to be passionate about it from the get-go. Otherwise, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yep, and it also carries across, as we said, to the audience, the infection of fun and banter and whatnot. For me, getting into casting, I just did it for a little bit of a laugh at the start. I thought it would be interesting. I was a player, so this is one route to get into casting, and thus had a very deep understanding of the game and went into the analytical side of casting. And I went for a huge journey. Actually, my first ever cast was an impromptu cast of the CG Open qualifiers, the Fight for Your Invite, not the one to get into CGP, but simply the one to get into the qualifiers for CGP. So not the highest level, it wasn't streamed, decided to throw it together, and it was terrible, but over even just 3 matches of just doing it, it was a huge improvement. And that is what at the start I think everybody really needs to do, to just get in and do it, try it out, see if you have some fun, and don't worry too much about what you're doing right or wrong. Just enjoy yourself, be confident, and get that at least initial step before you develop any bad habits to get to a small level where you can start building a base from.
Exactly, and I mean, I had a lot of people come to me in various different periods of time and asking for advice on how to get started, etc. I think the best advice I can give you is actually to take some steps to get started, because nobody's, you know, instant overnight sensation in terms of casting or streaming. Particularly with casting, I think casting's one I can probably lend my thoughts to a little bit more, but particularly with casting, a lot of the feedback you get are from various different sources. Obviously, the most notorious one is Twitch chat if you do decide to go down that rabbit hole first. But particularly with casting, you need to get in, you need to test yourself in the waters, and whether it's just, you know, casting over a replay and recording it via some sort of capture, the gameplay quality doesn't have to be fantastic. You just need to have a general idea. You don't worry about any of those little finicky production things. Just get in, get talking over the game, get comfortable about structuring structuring your sentences, structuring all these sorts of things. You need to get comfortable with all of those little nuances. You know, even just talking for that period of time is something some people start to struggle with. You know, you need to do that and then take that product. It doesn't have to be polished. Take it to a friend, someone you know casting, someone that can give you constructive and honest feedback as well. You don't want people that will inflate your ego unnecessarily. You want honest feedback as well, because if you don't get it, you're not going to improve. And that's just step one in the process. You then have to rinse and repeat that several times. And as you said, before you actually start to develop bad habits, you need to seek feedback from people perhaps who have had some experience casting, etc., if they are so gracious to lend their time.
I think the same thing that makes good casters is also the same thing that makes good players as well. Just that ability to constantly be trying to improve, to never really be satisfied with the level you're at, and always take it to the next one if they can. And, you know, as you said, you are, well, you didn't say it, but you are always going to develop bad habits, and you need to be able to recognize that and have ways of dealing and fixing those bad habits. Defeating bad habits is really, really important. Everybody has just so many habits. We are very habitual creatures, and there are some good habits in casting, and there's also a huge amount of bad habits that every single person has. Even a lot of people in casting at the moment have the same bad habits in across the Rocket League community. Stuff like saying the same word over and over again, like saying and a lot, saying indeed, yes, hello, definitely every time your co-caster pushes it across.
That acknowledgement, yeah.
It's so easy to do. I personally say yeah every time, and it's probably like the least intrusive of them, but it's something that really, really comes across in my casting, that I'm saying yeah, and part of that is me trying to pull, the conversation to myself, but it's such a bad habit. You're having a conversation, and you should be able to carry that across without the need of acknowledging everything that your co-caster says. You're both on the same page, should be talking about the same thing.
100%, and it also helps with the flow of conversation as well. It just leads to better habits all around. But you're right. As soon as you start getting rid of one bad habit, more often than not, it gets replaced with another bad habit. In my early days of commentary, myself and my commentary partner at the time, Pika, I don't know if anyone knows that particular commentator, very Counter-Strike orientated, but we did develop certain habits. And don't get me wrong, it's good to have catchphrases and words that you're known for saying, or particular phrases that you're known for saying. That's a cool thing. It's actually cool to have people recognize that as something that's in your repertoire and as something that you leave for the special moments. But there are also those bad habits as well, and people pick up on those, so much so that we wanted to eliminate bad habits enough that we would actually create what they call a bingo card and have our most commonly referenced bad habits put on that bingo card. And it was a bit of a game, but if you have that there near you, it's actually a visual reminder and constant, I guess, source of feedback for you to actually correct these habits, make them better. That being said, though, too, practice in these sorts of situations also helps a lot. If you haven't casted in a long time, it can be quite, it can be quite traumatic if you if you come back and things aren't quite flowing the way that they used to.
Yeah, you need to warm up your casting just like you need to warm up your playing. Even on a day-to-day basis, there are some voice exercises that you can do. You should be doing that on a daily basis, not just days that you're casting as well, because that kind of warm-up exercises, they do improve your voice over time. Something that I am very aware of, because I am still very much in the phase of working on my voice. And if you don't have the voice, to start with, that's fine. If you still have the passion for casting, you can work on your voice. If you have the voice, then it's a huge benefit. Then you don't have to really, truly worry about that.
Screw you if you've already got the voice.
Yeah, it's a long effort. And, I think that is the biggest thing that I have had feedback on. And sometimes I've had some really, really atrocious feedback from people that I've specifically asked for feedback. And I've been very selective about that. I have a lot of people saying, well, your voice is boring. I wouldn't want to listen to you. You put me to sleep. It's like watching tennis. I wish you would go onto the radio and old people would listen to you, etc. And that was mixed amongst multiple pieces of feedback. And I knew that I could pull out some gems of feedback and ignore that. And it's not necessarily that I'm ignoring it, but it is that I know that I can improve my voice, that there are ways, and again, it's still a long journey for me. I have a very difficult problem with getting a high amount of range, but
yep.
It's something that is workable on. If I can do it, you can do it. If you think your voice is annoying, you're wrong. Nobody thinks that they have the coolest voice in the world, except Johnny Boy, who thought that he sounds amazing. But everyone else hates the sound of their voice. They think they sound like an idiot until they've heard it over and over again and are just used to it. So you just got to keep going and pushing through that.
Exactly, and I think some of the best feedback you would normally get would be from your peers anyway. So in that particular regard, if you've got someone that you do work with closely, being subject to that sort of feedback, it's the best feedback you're going to get. Why? Because you're on the same page. You're obviously wanting the same things as well, but more importantly, you're both doing research in how to actually improve these sorts of habits. So you're going to pass on tidbits of advice to one another and actually improve in that regard. So yeah, it's a process. And as someone said before, you don't have to have the best internet. You don't have to do anything like that. Basically, a basic, even shadow play or any sort of fraps capture, something that records audio and video and you commentating over it, even if you can't do a full game, do a 2 or 3 minutes and just build from there. So, who knows, you might be the next diamond in the rough.
Yeah, and again, the hardest part is getting started. Once you've done that, if you do want to come cast, there are those opportunities. AGTV, they often bring in new people. And if you want to experience for the first time, whenever I am doing those community casts, stuff like RLOs, because they often don't have anyone casting it, if AGTV can't show up, Hype as well. AGTV hasn't cast it for the last 3 weeks, so I've been doing it, and I'm always happy to get someone brand new. It makes it a much easier experience. Play-by-play is probably the hardest thing to cast the first time you are casting, so it's often worth not even going straight into that for a live cast to try and do play-by-play, and instead stick to analysis, stick to color, because you can think of smart things to say. There's not that high pressure. But when you are when you're play-by-play, you've got to flow, and there's a lot of things to say, and you got to keep going. And if you pause every 3 seconds to say then it can sound really weird. So it's easier to get in that way. And on the same note, if I'm doing play-by-play with you, I can kind of carry you in a sense. I can lead you into topics to talk about it, and you can either ignore those topics and actually talk about something smart, or you can carry on with that, and it's much easier for you. So if you are wanting to get into it, please feel free to reach out to myself. And if you want actual proper advice from somebody who actually gets paid to cast, then go talk to Jim.
Have people flooding my inbox now. But no, seriously, I will at least point you in the right direction with a lot of that stuff too. So it's about just obviously having the confidence to take the first steps, and as I said, it's got to be something that you're motivated by and passionate about. Otherwise, it's pretty clear that the amount of work required to get where you want to go is going to become pretty obvious pretty quickly. So, got to be prepared to do it. That being said, though, if it's something you enjoy, it barely feels like it's actually any work at all.
Exactly. Same thing, I think, goes along with streaming. If you're enjoying yourself, you will get better at it. It's something that you need to improve on. Interacting with the audience is actually quite difficult. Keeping track of what's going on. Streaming production is actually, while pretty simple at an individual streamer level, there is stuff that you need to remember that even now I still forget over and over again, like turning the mic on, turning the mic off, that level of stuff. You get into a habit eventually of doing it, but at the start you will need to practice it. You will need to be enjoying yourself, and you will need to work on your voice if you are trying to be entertaining. And entertainment can come in multiple varieties for the streamers. You could just be really, really good at the game, but a lot of people are going to see OCE and the top level of player and just instantly pass over them at this point in time until we are on the international stage and say, well, why would I watch this OCE streamer while this EU streamer is online? So you need to be at least in some way entertaining in your streams, and that doesn't involve hamming it up. It just involves interacting with chat, not being too salty or being overly salty with yourself.
That works
in a way that's not like so, putting off. In a way that you can be angry at yourself without like going in game and being toxic, because a lot of people will be put off by that. But you just have to be exaggerated, really. People enjoy that level of entertainment. And you will, if you want to be a successful streamer in OCE, have to do both. Play well and be entertaining.
Yeah, it's often a fine balance. But yeah, it's a different beast, streaming, as opposed to playing. You need to be engaged the whole time. You need to be engaging as well. It's taxing. But look, there's plenty of orgs out there too that want their players to stream and be engaging and represent their brand on many different levels, and I think it's a fantastic way of doing so. But yeah, it's not as easy as some people would think. So be prepared to learn a lot. Be prepared to watch other streamers and learn from what they do really well, and also from what they don't do too well either.
Exactly. Hopefully you actually have good enough internet if you want to be a streamer. I think
If you're blessed.
if you're blessed with the internet. I'm not. I kind of, if you do want to pay to stream, then you can reach out to me and I'll give you the details of what I do for mobile phone streaming. But it is quite expensive, and for most people, they're not trying to make that platform, but it is valuable, especially if you are a top player. Not just from, you're probably not going to be making a lot of money, especially, unless you think about a year down the line, but you might be making an audience, you might be making fans, more followers, you'd make yourself more viable for orgs to look at. So it does feed back into that last little area.
Yeah, and ultimately, it's about, as we said in earlier episodes, building your personal brand. So it's a good long-term strategy for a player because you're not always going to be able to play Rocket League or esports. If that's your passion, it'll enable you to open other doors in other avenues, like casting further down the track. When you're washed up.
Yeah. It happened too soon for me. I got washed up almost before I began, so it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
But, there's a guy on my left or right over here, also used to be competitive player, now washed up and just a caster as well. Same with PDG, cast alongside Jim Nesso. Barl even used to play some competitive, didn't he? And now he's washed up. So,
yeah.
I think in the Rocket League scene, there's very few washed up people. They came straight into casting, but in those older scenes, they're all just washed up. So you all have a future, even if you are like Soma and you're slowly declining in your skills. You will get to finally make it into the casting eventually. I think he's got a good
personality. I see him
streaming. Casting. Yeah, he is streaming now, so he's... and I think he'll be quite good. He's quite an entertaining person. It's taking a while to improve his streaming skills. Today, he, I think, was playing Diablo 3 and had his character permanently deleted because it died while he was lagging. So that was fun to watch.
All those hardcore players out there know how you feel.
Yeah. So that is the end of the main segment of the show. If you watching on Twitch, we're about to go into Q&A, so start asking your questions and we will answer every single one for the next 15-20 minutes. And if you are on YouTube, thank you very much for watching.